Story 1.
When I was 17, my mom married her longtime boyfriend. They were together since I was around 10, but we didn't live with him or have a relationship of any kind until they decided to get married, so essentially 7 to 8 years of him just being mom's boyfriend we see sometimes. I have a younger brother, 4 years younger, and he has 3 children. 2 were already grown adults when they got married, but the third was only 8. It was a simple courthouse wedding, dinner at a chain restaurant afterwards. She prioritized her new husband over my brother and I ever since then. Anything he says goes. Anything his youngest son wanted was fine, even if she didn't like it herself, but my brother and I were always a problem, and needed punishments. We moved into his house, and his son would make comments like "this is my house," or "this is my dad's house," and this was never properly addressed or taken care of. This child grew up to resent my mother and throw tantrums. He even tried to physically assault her when he was 13. He often threatened her. He never went to therapy, as his father was against it. The child's mother hated my mother and would purposely do and say things to make our life more difficult. For example, show up to the house unannounced and either yell from the porch or circle the property looking into windows. She also refused to get her son the therapy he needed to adjust to a new family living situation. She was notorious for weaponizing her son against his father. His adult children are from his first marriage and stayed out of the drama. They had their own children at this point and lived their own lives. I only saw them on holidays briefly. I honestly partially blame my mom for the poor relationship her and her husband's ex-wife have. They used to work in the same nursing home as RNs, and were very close friends. We would even visit her and her husband at their house, the one we moved into, for dinner. She always yelled about how my mom stole her husband. I didn't know the details as a child, and didn't really understand it, but I can imagine them now as an adult. My brother and I were made to live in a house that was not our home. I developed severe depression and anxiety during this time that lingers to this day. My mom became extremely narcissistic and emotionally and financially abusive. I had hundreds of dollars stolen from me during this time. I was the scapegoat and only daughter. To this day, neither my brother nor I have good relationships with her husband or his family. And our relationship with her is strained and difficult. His youngest is now 22, never graduated high school, and needs his father to help him financially. His job is also through the company his father works for, construction. My mother and her husband moved into a new house a couple years ago, and instead of selling the old one they let his youngest live there alone. He pays bills, but the house is in his father's name, and his car is one of my mother's. Without them, I don't think he could function on his own. I have recently gone through a divorce and my mom has started saying things to me like "I wish I could get a divorce, and I'm stuck here. I have no choice unlike you. It's stressful and I don't know what else to say besides, you chose this." She hates it, but it's the truth. I try not to bring it up because she gets angry and denies the abuse I suffered. She resents her husband now but refuses to do anything about it. To others it's "I love my husband. And how wonderful he is." She shares photos of them and their house on Facebook constantly to paint a perfect picture. To me it's about how much she hates him and how much she regrets it. I feel this only makes the relationship we have worse. Anybody else have similar situations happen and how did you handle it? I'm 30 now, have lived on my own since I was 21, and I have a low contact with them overall. It's just messed up and I'm still learning how to process everything that's happened.
My opinion. I've never been in such a situation, but I believe that the mother was in pursuit of her happiness back in a day. Probably she thought that she can figure it out, but things went out control and she preferred not to do anything to ruin her relations with her new husband. Your mother should have focus on supporting and protecting you, but she preferred to be good for this man and his son. That is why it all ended like this. Story 2.
My 16 male parents are getting remarried after being divorced and remarrying and having other kids after 9 years. For most kids this is a dream come true, but I don't really know how to feel. My stepmom and stepdad were okay, but I could tell they would prefer I wasn't around. I used to alternate weeks between my mom and dad's. I always felt like an odd man out, like I was an outsider looking in. To give credit to my parents, they never once tried to excluded me. They always made sure to spend quality time with me one-on-one to maintain that parent-child relationship, but also tried to foster my relationship with my brothers. Both of them have sons from their marriages. I'm not trying to sound like a brat or anything. I used to see that my brothers get both parents 24/7 while I got to spend only 50% of the time. They used to get huge parties for their birthdays. Don't get me wrong, I got the same in X too, but I always felt off. Same with Christmases. Or like my sporting events, either dad or mom would show up but never at the same time. I used to see my friends have both of their parents around at the same time, and I never got to experience that. I know that's the whole blended family experience, but that doesn't mean it didn't hurt any less. I never once told my parents how I was feeling. I used to think I was being irrational and just jealous, but over the years it got worse. In September, mom sat me down and told me dad and her are dating again. They kept it quiet for a year to see if it was serious. So how it's now, the brothers spend half their time at my parents' house and their parents' house. I finally get to experience what it's like to have my parents around 24/7. Dad moved in January, and I feel out of place almost. I find it hard calling the house a home. I feel as though I was robbed of my childhood. I know that's not the case, and my parents did their best. I know my parents love me to the moon and back. I love them just as much. That's just how I feel. Is there something wrong with me? I should be happy, but I'm clearly not. I'm miserable. I spend most nights crying now.
My opinion. Getting through a divorce of parents is always one of the worst experiences child might go through. Your parents did their best to make you feel cared and loved. I can understand your feelings, but what else could they do? Try to work on these thoughts. Think about how good things will get after some time, when you will get used to have both parents on all your parties and sport events. I hope you will forgive them. What are your thoughts about this story? Let me know in the comment box below. Story 3.
I just turned 18 a few months ago. My parents, for as long as I can remember, have bickered over money issues. My mom has sued my dad countless times since they got divorced. I was 6, for child support, so a few months before I turned 18, my dad stopped paying. I think he missed 7 months, and she's trying to take him to court for what she's owed. Now, not a lot of this money goes to me. It usually gets spent on her hair appointments and makeup and clothes. She likes all her things to be high-end, even though we are lower middle class, from what my friends told me. I've been out of school for a year, so none of it really goes towards me or school anymore, as I was going to a private school before my final year. I can see why he's done paying for her stuff. My relationship with my mom has always been bad. She moved me into her mother's house after the divorce, for a few months, which has basically turned into the rest of my life. She made me take Ritalin and go to Catholic school, church until I was 16. Always has told me I was a mistake, and at the same time has told me nobody will love me like she does. I don't like her mother at all. She's extremely devout Catholic, tells me I look like a gypsy constantly, always makes me keep my door open, and bangs on it until I open. Because of this, I lock my door, hide in my closet, and stay silent until she goes away. I feel sorry that she's had to spend the last decade or so with my mom and I, but we still get into a lot of fights. My mom is mean and selfish too. She has always embarrassed me in front of my friends, creeped out anyone who's gotten close to me, and completely wrecked the relationship between my dad and I. She loves my brother more than me, who is also a major creep and I think pedophile, and has told me countless times that I'm a mistake and she can't wait to get away from me. Well, a few months ago, she finally broke the news that she's getting remarried and moving out. She moved out 2 weeks ago and said, since I'm of legal age now, that I'm not to come with her. I haven't really talked to her since, and my grandma tells me all the time about how awful my mother is and how awful my friends are. I'm tired of it. I called my dad the other day and he told me to go out to lunch with him. I was gonna ask him what I should do, but before I could, he told me he had news for me. Him and his girlfriend finally got married. I asked him why I wasn't invited to the wedding. He said they eloped. He also told me that they did it over a year ago. I got really upset and got up and pointed at him. I yelled about how him and my mom are idiots and terrible people and how they put me through hell, and both left me as soon as I turned legal adult age, and now I'm not a part of their lives anymore. I cried a lot, and he didn't do anything but sit there and stare at me, so I left. So far, my phone has been silent for days. So now I'm here. Nobody will talk to me, I'm stuck with my grandma, and I have only a few friends, but I always have to go to their place to hang out. I don't have a job because I've never had one. I've been thinking about getting one, but I have no idea how to work. I'm so terrified about working that I went to fill out an application and started crying in front of the lady I was giving it to and freaked out and left. It's crazy, I've gone from having both of my parents constantly telling me what to do, where, be friends with, and watch to nobody around except my grandma. I can't stand her, and she always cries and I do too. I wish I could leave, but I have no idea what to do. What should I do?
My opinion. Wow, what a story. You've passed through a lot of things in your life. But seems like now you're free to do whatever you want. I feel like you need to make a step towards your father. Tell him that you're sorry for that situation during the lunch. Don't argue with your grandma. She's not young anymore, and she may not understand you the way you wanted to, but be kind with her. Elderly people have their own views and thoughts that you may not agree on, but do not argue with her or yell on her. That won't help. Be patient and polite, and try to find a job. Everyone started somewhere, this is your starting point. You will feel how easier things will be when you have something to do, when you have responsibilities. Plus some additional income will make your life a bit easier. Take care. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe on my channel.